The next point, we should ensure whatever we see is clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello, my students at home. I am Abbas Shehu by name, your usual commerce teacher. I'm here to continue with the topic we started last week, which is documents used in buying and selling of goods. In our last class, we discussed with you about 8 documents. We talked about letter of inquiry, quotation, order, price list, invoice, etc. Today we are going to take a look at 7 different documents that are normally used, that normally exchange hands between buyers and sellers. The documents that we intend to discuss with you are consignment note, credit note, debit note, statement of account, pro forma invoice, receipt, trade journal, and check. These are the documents that we are going to discuss with you as far as this class is concerned. Number 1, which is a consignment note. This is a document issued by a carrier when goods are sent from one place to another. This document is normally used when a carrier is involved in transporting goods, when a private transporter is used in moving goods from one place to another, from the point they are bought to the point where the buyer will receive them. This document will be given by the seller to the carrier. The carrier will now give this document to the buyer by the time the goods are delivered. It gives details, this document gives details of the goods in terms of weight, in terms of the names and addresses of both the buyer and the seller. Let's talking about a consignment note. It is usually handed over to the carrier, signed on delivery by the buyer. The buyer will sign. 2 copies are made available. 1 copy will be held by the buyer. Another copy will be given to the carrier to be taken back to the seller or sender. Now, what are the uses of this document? This document has several uses. Number 1, it is used when an independent transporter is used. Independent carrier. 2, it shows details of the goods sent. 3, it serves as evidence of delivery. Let's talk about the first document, which is known as a consignment note. We now move to the second document, which is known as credit note. Credit note. This is a document that is sent equally by the seller to the buyer to correct an overcharge. To correct an overcharge. What do you mean by overcharge? When a seller mistakenly, wrongly overcharged the buyer, he will now send this document telling the buyer that, yes, you were wrongly overpriced, which means that I'm going to give you balance of what I have overcharged you. For example, a buyer may have bought a good, might have bought goods costing 500,000, and in the invoice, the seller mistakenly charged him 5,500 naira. That 500 naira is the overcharge. Now the seller will send this document to the buyer, telling him that I have mistakenly overcharged you, and I am going to give you your 500 naira back. Or it can equally be used when the buyer receives the goods, and on receiving the goods, discover that there are some goods that are damaged, or there are some goods that are not given, according to the specification given, according to the order given. The buyer has rights to return the goods, to take the goods back. And it is the duty of the seller to now write this document and send, to give him the balance of, or the amount of goods being returned. That's talking about what we mean by credit note. And this document is normally written in red ink. In red ink. You may be asked in your exams, especially in objective questions, which of the following documents is normally written in ink? Debit note, credit note, so on and so forth. The answer is credit note. It is normally written in red ink to differentiate it from other documents. Uses of this document include: 1, it is used to correct overcharge in an invoice. 2, it is used when the buyer has returned some faulty goods to the seller. We have said that already. Number 3, the last one here, it is used when the seller had decided to give an allowance to the buyer. The buyer may not even know that the seller has intention of giving him some allowances just to encourage him. So he will now send this document to tell him that, yes, I'm going to give you a certain amount of money, which is going to be part of the reduction of what you have paid for in terms of the price of the goods bought. Let's look at a sample of a credit note. It is usually written like this with a number. We have a credit note as the heading. It's Jibawa Islamic Bookshop and Stationery. We have the address of the buyer. We have the particulars of goods here. The quantity, the particulars, the net price. We have one item only. This is normally in terms of return of goods. The buyer returned one copy of Quran as a result of either being damaged or as a result of not giving according to specification. So the seller now sent this document telling him that, yes, this is one copy of Holy Quran received that is damaged or is not given as ordered, and this is the price we are going to give you. This is what we are now going to refund to you. We are going to refund to you 1,140 naira as against 1,200 naira because there's a discount of 60 naira. This is just a sample. Now we go to document number 3, which is debit note. This is just like the opposite of credit note. It is a document sent by the seller also to the buyer when there is undercharge. When there is undercharge. In other case, we talk about overcharge, but here we talk about undercharge. Or when goods are equally returned. When goods are equally returned. Now we go to uses of a debit note. Number 1, it is used to correct an undercharge. 2, it is used when an invoice is not well priced. Number 3, it is used to inform the buyer that his account has been debited. It is used to inform the buyer that his account has been debited. Let's talking about debit note. We quickly now go to the sample of a debit note. Same thing here. We have debit note, Jibawa Islamic Bookshop and Stationery, Khadija Ismail, and Goshani Kaduna. We have the date. We have the particulars of what is there involved. We have the amount. We have the date. And we have the accountant, who is normally the person that usually issued or make out this document. That's talking about debit note. We go to document number 4. The first one we talk about here is consignment note, credit note, debit note, and we are now going to number 4, which is a statement of account. Statement of account. It's a document sent to the buyer by the seller. So all these documents we have been talking about today are documents that are sent by the seller to the buyer. They all originate from the seller to the buyer, including this particular one. It is sent by the seller to the buyer to show the relationship that exists the transactions that happen within a particular period of time, usually a month. It is given at regular intervals to show the relationship that exists, the transactions that happen between the seller and the buyer. In this document, date will be there, and the transactions that happen on such date will be equally there. The amount will be there from the first day to the last date. This will help to give the buyer an idea of what has been happening between him and the seller. So we now look at uses of a statement of account. One, it helps customer to know thoroughly what he has bought over a period of time. Two, it gives the buyer an idea of his financial position at the time. Because he will, based on the comments, based on the statement, he will be able to know what his financial position, whether he is doing well in his business or not, whether he has been buying and selling, so on and so forth. Number three, it shows the balance due. It shows the balance due, where there is credit source, where the seller sells the goods to the buyer on credit, and the buyer is still owing some money to the seller. This document will serve as a reminder. It shows all purchases and payment made. That's number four. Number five, it serves as a reminder for an account that is overdue. It serves as a reminder to show that yes, you are yet to pay some certain amount of goods you bought are yet to be paid for. So it serves as a reminder. And the last one, it serves as a request to pay. Because by the time you are reminding him, you are indirectly requesting him to come and pay. These are the uses of a statement of account. We have a sample here that has details of the transaction. This is Jibawa Medicals, Nigeria Limited. And that is the seller. Then we have Pasaha Dental Clinic, Kawo Kaduna, as the buyer. And the transactions that exist between them within this month, the month of July 2021, on 23rd of July, surgery chair costing 65,000. Then we have on 25th of the same month, hospital bed, 70,000. On 28th, he paid cash amounting to 100,000, which means the balance is now going to be 35,000. Then he now again gave out a check of 30,000, which brings down the amount he's owing to only 5,000. So he has a balance of 5,000 to pay in his account. This will help him to know that he has a balance of 5,000 naira to settle. That's talking about what we mean by statement of account. We now go to item number 6, which is pro forma invoice. Pro forma invoice. This is an invoice that is usually submitted before goods are dispatched as a polite request for payment of goods to be made. You send this document as a polite way, in advance, before goods are sent, for the buyer to pay for the goods before the goods will be sent to him. It is different from invoice. An invoice is a document, if you remember in our last class. In our last class, we talk about invoice, and we say it's a document that accompanies goods. After the goods are bought, after money is being paid, after the goods are sent, now the document known as invoice will be sent along with those goods. But in terms of pro forma invoice, you send the document before money is paid, before goods are sent. That's the difference between pro forma invoice and ordinary invoice. And let's talk about uses of invoice. Number one, it is used when dealing with a customer for the first time. It is used when dealing with a customer for the first time. You never know whether when the goods are sent, he will pay or not. You don't have that trust, so you now send him this document for him to make payment before the goods are sent. Two, it is used as a polite way of asking for payment. You ask for payment politely. Number three, it is used when goods are sent to an agent. that when the goods are not sent directly to the buyer, when the goods are sent to an agent who is going to take charge of taking the goods to the buyer, this document is equally used. Then the last one, it is used as a quotation, giving details of prices of goods that are available that will be ready for sale. Before we go into the last two documents, that is receipt and check, let's look at the differences between an ordinary invoice and a pro forma invoice. Number one, in terms of ordinary invoice, it is used as evidence of credit source. While in terms of pro forma invoice, it is used when the seller has no intention of selling on credit. When the seller has no intention of selling on credit. Number two, it is sent, in terms of ordinary invoice, it is sent along with goods. It is sent along with goods. But in terms of pro forma invoice, it is not. It is sent without goods. Without the goods. These are some of the differences between an ordinary invoice and a pro forma invoice. Now we go to our document number 7, which is a receipt. This is a very common document that is known by almost every one of us, because we see it on a daily basis as we transact business. It is a document usually given by a seller to a buyer when goods are bought and paid for. When goods are bought and paid for, the seller will issue the document to the buyer. It is a document which shows evidence of payment. It is written and issued after being signed by the seller. That's the space where the buyer and the seller are expected to sign. By the time they signed, it becomes a full document, a valid document. At that time, it can be given to the buyer by the seller. It contains information such as names of both the seller and the buyer, date of purchase, description of items bought, the amount, so on and so forth. Now we go to uses of a receipt. Number one, it serves as evidence of payment. Number two, it shows details of transaction, what is bought or sold, the date, the amount, so on and so forth. Number three, it is used as a source document. By source document, we're talking about a document which is used in recording of business transactions. It can be used to record from who the goods are bought, when the goods are bought, how much the goods cost, what are the goods bought, so on and so forth. Number four, it is used for auditing purposes. When auditors come, they ask of receipt. What have you bought? What evidence do you have that you bought this and that? And the receipt is normally given. And when it is given, it is expected that the receipt should be clean, nothing like alteration. It's unacceptable. A sample of a receipt is shown here. For those of you that are watching us, Fasaha Dental Clinic, Kawa Road, Kawa Kaduna, receipt. We have name of the buyer of either goods or service. We have the address of the buyer. We have the amount of either goods sold or services sold. We have the description of what is bought. We have the customer's signature as well as the manager's signature. Then we have this. By the time this is written, it's normally in triplicate to be kept with the seller and the original copy given to the buyer. We go to what is called trade journal. Trade journal. This is also another document. It is a publication which serves as a source of information to the buyer. It contains articles on matters of interest to people in a particular trade or profession. Remember when we were talking about advertising? when we're talking about print media, we talk about newspapers, we talk about magazines, we talk about journals. This is what we're talking about here. A journal is normally published by a seller and distributes to buyers, to intended buyers, for them to have information about goods and services that are there, that are out there for sale. And it is a publication that has to do with a particular matter, a particular subject, profession, or trait. Uses of our trade journal. Number one, it serves as one of the means of advertising. It serves as a means of advertising, like we have just mentioned. It is used to advertise goods. Number two, it can be shared easily to potential buyers individually because it is like a written book that can easily be distributed and be distributed individually to those that you have in mind, that you think can come and buy what you are selling. Number three, it contains various information about other matters. It is not only the trait or the subject or the profession. It can contain certain information about other matters too. That's talking about trade journal. We now go to the final one that we have here. The final document that we have here, which is known as a check. A check is defined or is seen as a written order to a bank to pay a specific amount of money to the person whose name is written on it or whose name appears on it. You are giving a bank an order. Pay so person. It is like a command because it is your money. You have money with them. You keep your money with them, and it is you that will dictate to them who they should give the money to. And that's why you issue a check. When you buy goods from a particular person, you can give the person a check. And this document is normally given by a buyer to the seller. It is the buyer that gives the document to the seller when goods are bought, when the buyer wants to pay for the goods. When the buyer is not intending to pay for the goods using cash, he can issue out a check. The seller will now take the check to the bank, collect the money. And it is a crime for a buyer to buy goods and issue out a check, knowing fully well that he has no money in the bank. Once he is caught, he is in for a big trouble. It is an offense. It is a financial crime. Now, a check is normally, like we said, a small piece of paper. That is an order. That is giving the bank an order. And on the check, we have one, the name of the bearer or the drawee, the person who is to go to the bank and withdraw the money. The amount expected to be drawn is equally written on the check. The amount is normally written in two ways, written in words and in figures. And there is a signature of the person giving out the check. And the signature must be regular. Once a signature is found to be irregular, the bank will reject and send you back to the giver. Let's talking about a check. Now we talk about the last thing here, uses of check. It is used as a means of payment. It is used in making payment, settling of debts. It is also less risky to carry. And it is easy to carry. It is less risky to carry about, and it is easy to carry. You can put it in your pocket without anybody knowing it. You can move freely without any problem. That's just about the end of our class. Before I go, let me quickly give you a summary. We have discussed in this class documents that are involved in buying and selling of goods and services. And we discussed the first one of them, which is a consignment note. And we talk about credit notes. We talk about debit notes. We talk about we talk about statement of account. We talk about formal invoice. We talk about receipt. We talk about trade journal. We talk about check. We talk about their uses and their samples. Lastly, assignment. 2 questions only. Number 1, A, distinguish between a credit note and a debit note. Distinguish between a credit note and a debit note. B, define a check. Number 2, stage 2, uses of each of the following documents. 1, statement of account. B, receipt. 3, trade journal. 4, OD, consignment note. Then we have the last one, Differentiate between an invoice and a pro forma invoice. These are the 3 questions you are expected to answer as usual. And by the time you answer them, send them to my number. And the numbers are Abbas Shehu 081 00127508. I repeat, Abbas Shehu 081 00127508. My other colleague, Yari Zakaria, on 080 656 94134. Yari Zakaria on 080 656 94134. Stay home, stay safe, and keep learning. Happy nice time until we see you in our next class.